This is Gemara and Eruvin Daf Pei. Tonight's shir should be Chos Ilui Neshama for Moshe ben Reb Chaim Alevi Zatzal Neshama Shavan Aliyah. Of course, Olachelim Yidimir ben Akir many ben Vechan Reb Chanit Chaim Sar Sham Simon Yisrael Ben Askin Demaziv Chayzer Chaim Sarasi Yosef Ben Midel Yisrael Shvudaya Shamei Basnami B'Shavei B'Shirchan Vadav Nitri Daniel ben Chana Rezol Liba Bracha Bastuvia Moshe B'Seich Shacheli Yisrael. We pick it up on the bottom of Pei Dalim and Pei's last 5 words on the Amud Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel. Moving along to Pei Hey Amud Aleph, says the Gemara. Bar Shebein Beis Chatzeres. We have a case. We have a pit, a well that is between two courtyards. Mufleges Mikos Elzar Ba. That is 4 tefachim away from one wall, and Mikos Elzar Ba, and it's 4 tefachim away from the other wall. Zem Moitzi Ziz Kol Shum Male. What's the halacha? This one takes out a little stick and fills up. Zem Moitzi Ziz Kol Shum Male, and he can fill up through his window. That is the Tanakama. Rav Yehuda Didei Amar. What does Rav Yehuda say? Afilu Kanya. Even if it's not actually a ziz, but rather it's a kanya, it's a small little reed, that is enough. So as you see the picture here in front of you, you have a well, you have 2 different chatzeros, and there's a little bit of a window over here, as you can see underneath this protrusion, and they want to stick their hand through the window and take some water out of the well. This is going to be a concept they're going to see, that they're using the airspace. These 2 people, the chatzer on the right and the chatzer on the left, have joint usage of the airspace with this well, and that's going to be the question, whether usage of an airspace by 2 people will answer one or the other. But says the Gemara to begin, that each one puts that ziz kalshu, puts out this beam and then allows you to carry, whereas if Yudah says no, as you see, it's a really thin stick. That is the Pashib Shad. Will say that's where the Rashi learns that the machlekes is going to be whether it has to be 1 tefach thick or whether it suffices with even less than that. Other Rishonim learn slightly differently, but we'll leave it with Rashi Pshat. Amrei Abaye Rav Yosef. So Abaye says to Rav Yosef, Rav Yehuda, that din that you just said, Rav Yehuda. Rav Yehuda said there could be even a teeny little reed sticking out. Who did Rav Yehuda get that from? So it says Abaye to Rav Yosef, Rav Yehuda, you know where he got that from? Shmuel. That's the opinion of Shmuel. What Shmuel? Rav who argued on Shmuel. What does he hold? Al Chavir Der Chavir. So we have a machlekes Rav and Shmuel whether 2 people who use a joint ownership of the airspace, does one answer on the other. Rav says it does not. Usage of airspace is not called 2 people using it, and therefore says Rav, it will not answer. Shmuel says Ein Adam answer. It does not answer. Rav says, one more time. Rav says it does not answer. Shmuel says it yes answers. So the Gemara assumes that which is Rav Yehuda, this dinner Rav Yehuda, that you require this kanya, that you require this reed, that's going to be according to the opinion of Shmuel, who's going to say that one will answer, as you see over here. In Rashi says, V'had Rav Yehuda, we're about 7 lines before the wide lines in Rashi says, V'had Rav Yehuda, Debayi Tikin Kolshu, that suffices with a little bit, is the Shmueli. Shmuel Rabbi Gamerla did Sarach Tikin Sas, that you need something, because he holds you could answer on your friend, and the only way it will not is if you do something. Let's just read one more Rashi. If it was Rav, the Havinami Rabbi Mirei. Very important. The Rashi is pointing out that we're trying to figure out where Rav Yehuda said this thing over, because Rav Yehuda 2 Rabbeim, Shmuel and Rav. So the Gemara says, first we think it's Shmuel, as Rashi explains, because if it was Rav, his other Rabbi, like Gamar Lo, why? Da'in Adam Yisrael Chaviroi B'tashmish Mufla Kazeh, because you never answer on each other when you just use the airspace. You would not even need a kanya, we not even need a reed. Let's look back at this picture for a moment. Let's just understand what the Gemara just said is, again, you have this window, you take your pail, you throw it out the window into the well, it picks up some water, you're going to have to pull it back in. Usage of the airspace. Rav says 2 people who use a joint airspace is not called using something together. It will not answer on each other, and says, Rav, you could go and carry freely from this well, throw your pails into this water, it is absolutely no issue. Shmuel is one that says no, you could answer that through the airspace, and that is the reason why Shmuel requires this little ziz kolshu, this little beam. So that's what the Gemara says, that Rav Yehuda said this din, it was the name of Shmuel, not Rav. Says the Gemara, okay, u'de Shmuel me'icha, where did Shmuel get this din from? Ilema, if you're going to tell me meha from the following statement, yesterday's Gemara, Dam Rav Nachman over Shmuel, Again, we're trying to figure out where does Shmuel hold that two people that use airspace. Yes, Aser is one of the other. Says the Gemara of Nachum, the name of Shmuel. We had that roof that was near the Rosh Hashanah. Again, let's remind ourselves we had Rosh Hashanah. Then we added 2 steps up to the Marpesa, the porch. Then we had the ladder up to the roof. And seemingly we have 2 different people using the airspace of that roof. Said Shmuel, and you need a sulam kavua, you need a ladder to be Miko. So the Gemara thought that the reason is because Shmuel holds you, yes, Aser on each other by using the airspace. Says the Gemara, that's not a proof. Delma Rav Papa, maybe Shmuel holds like Rav Papa, like we answered yesterday, that really the usage of this roof wasn't via the airspace, wasn't by people throwing things up, etc. How do they use the airspace? They put their hat down, they put their scarf down, like we said when they're walking through the street. So that's not going to be a raya. Again, we're looking for a raya to the opinion that Shmuel holds that 2 people using the airspace, one, yes, Aser's on each other. Ella, you know what the proof is going to be? Our case that we started with today. El Meha, Zemoitzis Kolshu Mamale, Zemoitzis Kolshu Mamale, and each one has to do something. Why? Taima Da'apik. So what do we see? If you put out this ziz, if you put out this beam, you created a hecker, something to show you that you're not allowed to carry. Why? Because the 2 people Aser on each other. If you didn't do something, Amrinan, one would yes Aser on his friend via the airspace, and that is the opinion of Shmuel. Says the Gemara, fine. So that's Shmuel. What about Rav? Where does Rav know that one does not Aser on his friend? Udrav me'echa, where did Rav get his din? Ilema me'eha, if you're going to tell me it's from here. Which case? Another case that we had many times. We have those 2 porches, one above the other, suspended over the water. And we said if the top guy makes the mechitza, makes that protrusion down towards the water, what's the din? But the bottom guy did not do that. They're both aser. Why are they both aser? So the Gemara thinks right now, Amar Rab, you know what the reason is? Lo Shanu, the only time it's going to aser is Ella Bismucha, if they're very close to one another. Avol b'mufleges arba. Let's say these 2 porches are slightly away from each other, they're 4 tvachim away from each other. Then what's the halacha? Al yoina mutares v'tachtoina asura, and the bottom one is aser. Even though the bottom guy down here, how does he use it? He takes his pail, he throws it up through the top one. So the Gemara thinks that this is a makar to Rav, that even though they use it via the airspace, the bottom guy throws something up to the top. Still, says the Gemara, we see according to Rav, it does not aser. We see the raya to Rav's opinion that usage of an airspace of 2 people, that both the top and the bottom uses airspace will not aser. Again, no, I'm sorry, we don't have the picture. We saw the picture yesterday. Says the Gemara, 6 lines from the bottom. No, what's the proof? Maybe this case is different. Again, this case of the porches. Again, the first case that we had, it was a well between 2 chatzeros, and you had to throw something out your window to get it from the well. That's a real usage of the airspace. We're now trying to find the precedent that Rav held that does not aser, and the Gemara wants to say it's from this case of the 2 porches, the bottom guy throws up his pail. Says the Gemara, what's the proof? The bottom guy, how does he use it? He throws up his pail and then it goes down and he has to pick up the water. And the top guy doesn't have to throw it all. He just lowers his pail down. So it's all relative. Then it's like one guy, like we saw those cases, that one guy to use the pillar was above 10 tefachim, he has to throw something on it. And the guy in the second floor just sticks his hands right out and puts it directly on the pillar. And what was the halacha? Of course, the one that has the easier usage was allowed. So maybe the reason why in this case of the 2 porches that Rav allowed the top porch to use it was not because Rav necessarily holds that you do not aser via the airspace, but maybe the reason he says the Gemara, because relative to the bottom guy, the top guy has an easier usage. So this is not a good raya to the opinion of Rav. Ella says the Gemara, let's try again, 4 lines to the bottom. Meha. We have 2 houses, and we have 3 rooms, 3 broken down houses between these 2 houses. Again, here's the picture. You have 2 houses and you have 3 broken down houses. And the case is going to be, how is each house on the outside allowed to use these runes? And right now we think that the 3 runes are stuck in a line 1, 2, 3. Says the Gemara, this house is allowed to use this rune by throwing through the window. And this one's allowed to use it by throwing it into his house. Moving along to Hey, Amid Beis, V'emsahi Aser, and the middle guy is Aser. Again, so the house on the right could go out of his window to that room, house on the left to go out of his window to that room. Says the Gemara, the middle room no one is allowed to use. Okay, says the Gemara, let's figure this out. Yasef Rabruna v'Kamerla Shmeitzer. Rabruna was sitting and saying over this din. Amarli Rav Elazar, Barbe Rav Amar Rav Achi. Did Rav really say this din that each outside house can use the rooms, but the middle house cannot? Amarli in, yeah, Rav said this din. He said, yeah. Achbali Yushmuzei. Show me where Rav is living. I have a question. I got to go ask the Rebbe. Achbali. So he showed him his house. Asli Kamei Rav. He came in front of Rav. Amarli. Amar Mar Hachi. Rebbe, did you see this din? Amarli in. He said, yeah, I did. What's your question? Amarli. Amaru Amar. But you yourself taught us yesterday's daf. Lezeb is shulshul, ulezeb is rika. What was the halacha? We had the top floor, and we had the bottom floor, the chutzner and the marpeset, and we had this 10 tefach tall structure. So the guys in the bottom had to throw it up 10 tefachim. The guys in the top, we said, are 10 tefachim taller, so they have to bend down 10 tefachim. What was the halacha? Shteim asurim. They're both aser. So why are they both aser in that case? Yet in our case, we think right now, how do we use this window? In this case of the room, we think it's a similar case. We think, how do the people in the house use their rooms? They got to stick it out the window, and they got to bend it down, and they got to put it down on the floor. That's going to be like shulshul, you're putting it down. Neither one has a user-friendly usage, so why are they allowed to use it at all? Asked the Gemara. Amar Le, what's the connection? What shaykh is? Me, Sabris? Tikaimi Kishura, what are you talking about? The case wasn't that the three rooms are 1, 2, and 3. Rather, the case is they're situated like this, that we have it like the shape of a pyramid, a tripod literally is a chatzuva. And therefore, this top chatzar is able to be used directly by each one, and only the middle one does not have direct usage. And therefore, says the Gemara, that is the reason why Rav holds his din in this case. Let's take one moment and see Rashi. Rashi explains, Rashi is opposite the Mishnah to the Gemara. Loi Davidi kechatzuva. Says Rashi, Ushlashtan smuchen lebatim, all meaning, why we're trying to figure out this middle churva, this middle rooms, why is it aser? Answers the Gemara, you know why? Because that's also near the house. Because it's like the tripod, like the 3 legs of a pitcher. I'm sorry, Hilkach Hasmucha Mutar, and that which one is close is going to be mutter. Because you don't answer it via the airspace. And this is seemingly the opinion of Rav, that you don't answer via the airspace. The Shteim Hashem Sheba B'Shol Shol Rishon Shneim He V'Aval Gav the Shteim Smuchais Perutza Islam Site opened up into the middle one Isla. We don't have a good usage there. She also Misham parts. So back into the Gemara, it says the Gemara, Amar le Rav, Papa le Rava, Lema Shmuel, Leslie de Rav. Dimi, are you telling me that it comes out that Shmuel, what did Shmuel hold? Shmuel held that 2 people having usage in the airspace, yes, asers. Says the Gemara, we're about 10 lines down. Are you going to tell me Shmuel does not hold of Rav Dimi? Tchas Rav Dimi, Amar Rav Yechon, Makam Shemo Dalal Al Dalid, Botul B'nei Shas Ram, Name Shas Yachle Kativ Alav. In case we see many times, the fire hydrant, that Makam Patur, that everyone's allowed to put their stuff down on it. Ubulvad, that watch, La Yachlefu. We said many times, you just can't put it down and the other guy take it off. So the Gemara thinks right now that's called usage like via the airspace. That's not a regular usage, and if Shmuel holds that usage via an airspace asers, so when each one is using this Makam Torah, it should aser. Says the Gemara, no, a rule that we saw already, also B'Shua is deraisa. So we go in the Ikra Halacha, so it's mutter. Hach in our case is Shua is derabanan v'chamos v'chizik l'vreihem yoiser mishal Torah. Because our case is in Issa derabanan, they wanted to be more machmir, and therefore they made it aser to use it via the airspace according to Shmuel. Does Rav really say this? But we learned, does Rav really say that it does not aser via the airspace? But we learned, we have 2 houses on either side of Rishus Rabim, a memory of the Gemara Shabbos days. Rav, also listening, you're not allowed to throw from one house to the other. You're allowed to throw from one to the other. And the Gemara thinks right now, according to Rav, you're not allowed to throw one to the other. Seemingly, why not? Because they both have usage of an airspace. We have one porch on one side, one porch on the other side. They're throwing it over the top. Seemingly, they both have this middle usage of this airspace. And that's the reason Rav says it's usher. But you just told me a moment ago, Rav does not think things are usher through the airspace. Is that the case? The case is that they weren't level, and therefore you can't just throw directly. One has to go lower, one has to go higher. Therefore, what? It's not a direct throw. You have to throw up, and what's going to happen? You're going to miss. The ball's going to fall on the floor. You're going to drop the ball. You drop the ball, what's going to happen? You're going to go pick it up. So it's the Gzeir D'Rabbanan. You might go pick up the ball and come to carry in Rosh Hashanah. Over here you see, no, that is the next case. Very good. Just point out one quick ha'ara is in this last case. What did the Gemara say? The Gemara said that 2 portions are not level. So when I throw up, I might miss. And what's going to happen? The item's going to fall on the floor. And I'm going to come pick it up. Very interesting that some Rishonim go so far to say, so therefore, if you throw an item that could break, you throw a piece of a china plate, then there's no concern. What's the concern? It's going to fall on the floor and break? Let it break. What's the problem? You're not going to go pick it up because you have no reason to pick it up. It's just broken pieces. If you want to throw your football up to the top story, then we got to be Rari. The guy might drop it, or you might miss. It's going to go on the floor. You're going to come pick it up. So Gzeir D'Rabbanan, you might come to carry. But if it's an item that might break, says the Rambam, then we're not concerned. That's one point. The other point is that we look at Rashi over here. It seems like Rashi leaves out a few words. It sounds like Rashi learns that the concern is not necessarily you're going to come to pick it up off the floor, but rather Rashi learns the concern is that you might miss, and thereby the item might fall into Rosh Hashanah, and that by definition means that you are carrying. That by definition means you transported from your portion as a Yachid to the street of Rosh Hashanah, even though it was a Shaykik, that wasn't your Kavana. Seemingly that is how Rashi learned the Gemara, different Gersa. Let's continue with the Mishnah. Says the Mishnah. This should sound familiar. You place your Eruv in your little watchman's house. You put on the whole porch or this pavilion. It's not an Eruv. Let's say you live there. You don't answer the other people. Beis HaTeven, Beis HaBakar, Beis HaEitzim, the wood house, the straw house, the cattle house, Beis HaEitzim, the storehouse. I raise the Eruv, you're allowed to put the Eruv there. V'hadar Sham Eiser. Rav Yehuda Meir Misha Tvi says Yechel Ba'abayis Einay Eiser. If you have some ownership in that area, it does not aser for the obvious reason, because that means that the Baal Bayis retains ownership. Over here is a nice picture. Here's a Beishar. There's the Achsadra, a little gazebo on the back. And again, what we're learning here is that since if you were to live there, it would not be called you're living in this chutzner, because it's not called a house. That's not called a makom dira. So too, you can't put the chutzner, you can't put the Eruv there to be served for Shabbos. Here's just a very nice picture that should remind us the Beis HaEitzim, the Beis HaTeven, the Beis HaEitzim, the different storage areas. Says the Gemara. Amar Rav Yehuda B'Reider Rav Shmuel Bar Shilas Kol Makom Sha'amru. Whatever we said, and now Rav Yehuda Amar Rav Shilas really speaks out the rule that comes out of our Mishnah. Kol Makom Sha'amru Adar Shameinu Eiser. That if you live somewhere, it doesn't ask with other people. Again, a rule we've seen many times. All the people have to partner in the Eruv. If one person does not, it answers everyone. But if the one person that does not lives in the watchman's hut, it's not called he lives there, so it doesn't answer. So it says Rav Yehuda B'Reider Rav Shmuel Bar Shilas. So too, if in that area that wouldn't potentially answer, you put your Eruv, it's not a good Eruv because it's not called a place of dwelling. Chutz, except for Beishar the Yachid. If you have a Beishar like you see over here, you have a watchman's house of a Yachid, of a singular person, out of the whole Chatzar, then it yes works. Says the Gemara, now the flip side. Whenever Chazal said, you should not put your Eruv there. But Shitov Mivuais were more Mekalon, you're allowed to put it there. Chutz Ma'avir Mavoi, except for the airspace of a Mavoi. Says the Gemara, my Kamashlam, what's the Chiddush? We learned that already. Tanina, we already learned. If you put your Eruv in this gazebo, in this watchman's hut, no Eruv. So what's the obvious implication of our Mishnah? Eruv u'delay have, hashitav have, but the sheet of voice would work. So what's this price going to teach me? Answers the Gemara, Beishar the Yachid, v'avir demavu yitzrichle. No, it's teaching me the second half of the brisa. It's teaching me that if it's a singular watchman's hut, or if it's in the airspace of a mavui, that yes works. The light tanan, because that was not said in the Mishnah. Says the Gemara, let's bring a riot to that. Tananami achi, ha'noisin es eruva beishar achsadra marpeset, ubechatzar ubemavui, hareze eruv. Aiva tanan, seemingly this is a stira. Aiva tanan, but we learned the first white line, ein ze eruv, ema hareze shitov. You're right, it's not a good eruv, but it's a good shitov nivuais. Shita, says the Gemara, 1 second. Shitov mavui mintar. It's not guarded. If you have your bread sitting in the middle of the mavui, how's that guarded? How's that a good sheet of mivuais? Answers the Gemara, Ema sheba chatzar shema mavui. It means it's in the chatzar connected to the mavui. Amar Rav Yehuda or Shmuel, the Gemara is now going to bring out basically the same point. A din that we've seen. You're sitting around and eating, and it becomes Shabbos, and you forgot to make your Erev. What do you do? The bread on the table, we all have joint ownership in that bread. A basic rule that what's on the table belongs to everyone. Therefore, we all partake in the Erev from that bread. And some say it even works for the Shitaf Mevuais. When you're in your house, one is when you're in the Chatzar, and you see down here, 3 lines down from the bottom, Rashi explains, when you're Mesubim Bayis, then it works for the Erev. When you're in the Chatzar, then it works for the Sheet of Mivuais, like we just saw a moment ago, that you're allowed to put the Sheet of Mivuais in the Chatzar of the Mavui. Amrei Abayi L'Rabba, Tanya, Dimisayilach, let's bring a Raya to that which you just said. Eruvin Chatzir is b'Chatzir. The Erev Chatzir is allowed to put in the Chatzir, the Sheet of Mevuais, and the Sheet of Mevuais been Mavui. You're allowed to put in the Mavui. V'avidim ba, the question that we just had. Eruvin Chatzir is b'Chatzir. V'atzin Ananais is Eruvin b'Vei Sharach Sadron B'Presid Eino Erev. What's going on here? Are you allowed to put the Erev in the Chatzir, or are you not allowed to put the Erev? Does the Erev have to be in an area? Again, what's the integral question over here? Does the Erev have to be in an area that is watched, like a Makim Dira, or is it enough if it's in the watchman's side? On one hand, you're telling me if it's in the Chatzir it works. On the other hand, you're telling me the watchman's hut does not work. So what's the answer? We should answer Eruvin Chatzir is b'Bayis shebechatzir, house of the Chatzir. Sheet b'Bayis b'Chatzir sheb'Mavui. That works the Chatzir of the Mavui.